It rises every morning, and so do we. With fresh perspectives and innovative ideas, we grow trust for our clients in food and agriculture, in their products, processes, people, and brands. It's all we do, and we do it like no one else can. It's a new day in food and agriculture, with new challenges and bright possibilities. When you need someone you can count on, look east.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And the big news out of Washington, D.C. this week has been a long time coming. We've been talking about this conversation for months. There's really been conversations going on about it for years. We have a bill, a GMO labeling bill, that has passed out of both chambers and is headed to the White House for signature. And Phil, this vote that the House took on the GMO labeling bill today, a huge sweeping 306 vote, and carried the majority of both parties in favor of this bill.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. When you have an issue that has been this controversial for so long, I think I've said before, as long as I've been reporting on foreign policy, certainly almost in the entire 20 years that 2 decades that genetically engineered crops have been commercialized in this country, there have been calls for labeling, and we'll see. But certainly Congress believes they've settled this issue, or hopes they've settled this issue once and for all. But yes, I mean, again, it's remarkable that with an issue this controversial, that it passed. The bill passed so easily. Majorities of both Democrats and Republicans. 205 Republicans and 101 Democrats, and of course a big majority, not a majority of Democrats, but big bipartisan majority in the Senate last week.
So like we mentioned, there was 306 votes in favor of this bill, 117 against. Those that have been following this issue for a long time might remember that last year the House voted on a voluntary GMO labeling proposal that got 275 votes. So they switch over to a mandatory proposal with QR codes and all that other fun stuff, and they're able to pick up 31 votes.
Yeah, well, that was the key. That brought they brought on quite a few Democrats because of the compromise that the Democrats in the Senate had insisted on, to make disclosure mandatory. Now, critically for the industry, for food and agriculture, they allowed this digital disclosure, the QR codes, as an option for companies, and that's what we expect most companies to do that instead of some kind of language like the law in Vermont requires, produced with genetic engineering. That won't be required. And that was again the key to getting Democrats on board and getting this big majority over in the House.
So the bill's through both chambers, and now we kind of move to that where do we go from here phase of the conversation. Yeah. The White House has said that President Barack Obama will sign this bill, so really it moves on to the question of the process of USDA rulemaking. Now that process is expected to take about 2 years, and Phil, it's really already underway.
Yeah, they have a working group that's already preparing to do the implementation of the rule. There's that rule is likely to be challenged in court, but it's very important in terms of setting the specifics of how this disclosure requirement, or standard as it's called, will work. But it have to be said that Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack played a major role, very important role in terms of getting this issue settled. He put his department essentially at the disposal, offered their assistance very early on, well over a year ago, in terms of working with congressional aides in drafting first the House bill and then the Senate legislation. The General Counsel's office at USDA has also sent a couple of letters to both the House and Senate addressing questions that have come up and concerns that have come up. So it's really no surprise. It's a little like a farm bill where USDA works closely with the House and Senate Agriculture committees, and so they have a bit of a leg up when it comes to implementation because they've already been talking to staff. They already know what some of the issues are, and that's clearly what has gone on with this issue as well. They're ready to go.
So that vote on the GMO labeling bill was part of a vote series that wrapped up the House work before their summer recess. The Senate is also wrapping things up today, so the race to Reagan-Washington National Airport is on. Lawmakers are headed back to their districts. Some of them are headed to party conventions. And speaking of which, and speaking of seamless transitions, so are we. Phil and I next week will be at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, and then the following week in Philadelphia for the Democratic Convention. Phil and our editor and publisher Sarah Wyants will be in attendance. So it's going to be Agri-Pulse will have full coverage of both the Republican and Democratic national conventions, paying particular attention to news that might come out of maybe not issues directly related to agriculture, but a lot of tangential connections. Going to see a lot of news in regards to trade, immigration, maybe some energy policy, a lot of things that are come up. They're going to touch on agriculture. I mean, we're not expecting a firm stance from the Republican National Committee on their crop insurance policy, but we do expect for some tangential connections to agriculture, and we're looking forward to covering those events and bringing that coverage back to you.
Yeah, I hear there's presidential candidates are interested in trade this year. So
Right.
I think we'd be pretty sure we'll have a little discussion of that.
So be watching for Agri-Pulse coverage from the conventions in the next couple of weeks. But for a while, up until September, that's going to do it for this kind of series of videos where we recap the congressional week in review. Because quite frankly, they're not going to be in town for a while. They're heading back to conventions, to campaign, what have you, expected back in town in early September.
Yeah, big sigh of relief here.
But I think that's going to do it for this week. For Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.